It's spooky season. So you know what that means. It's another spooky review. This one is Come Play. This movie stars Ashley Robertson, Gillian Jacobs, John Gallagher Jr., and the kid from 8 Bit Christmas. Yeah, yeah. I didn't realize that either until I was like, wait a minute. And I looked at IMDb and I was like, that kid is also in 8 Bit Christmas. And Azzy Robertson was in Marriage Story and got some child actor nominations and wins for that. So, hey, these are good kid actors here. So, um, this film should be good. It's on Freevee, which is Amazon's free streaming service. It does have audio description, sort of. And it is a horror movie. So it is ripe for the Halloween season. It's ripe for the taking. So what is Come Play? And why did I choose to watch it? Well, first of all, I'm trying to bounce around between the streaming services. I wanted something off of Freevee. So that answers the first question. But the second answer is Come Play features a young autistic boy who finds that there's something in his phone and it's not SpongeBob. Although this film could literally be a SpongeBob movie. The SpongeBob is in so much of this movie. He's almost a realized character. There is literally a point in this film, I shit you not, where this monster is trying to entice the boy and he puts a yellow sponge out because he knows that this kid has watched so much SpongeBob. This kid uses the SpongeBob theme song to calm himself down because he's nonverbal autistic, so he doesn't speak. And he puts the yellow sponge out. So it's almost like SpongeBob becomes a character because now there's like a yellow sponge, out. And it's supposed to represent the one thing that makes this kid happy, which is SpongeBob. They use that clip from SpongeBob, the is mayonnaise an instrument? I heard that and I was like, oh my God, I've heard that so many times. Um, I don't know how they got that much SpongeBob into this movie, but it's a lot. It's a lot of SpongeBob. This kid watches nothing but SpongeBob. Um, and he has to use his technology because that's how he communicates. So he has a little device on his phone that allows him to type in so that he can talk. But there's also a story that pops up, and it's a weird story, and it's a story about Larry, and Larry, he wants to be his friend. He's lonely and he sees that other people are lonely and he's drawn to loneliness, and uh that's Larry for you. He's just a good guy. He's just a good scary guy, giant skeleton monster guy. He just wants to be your friend. So it's a horror movie of, like, I don't know, the BFG or a Monster Calls or something. I'm trying to think of other films that it kind of feels like somebody watched that and was like, no, this should be scary. I'm going to make a version of that. Um, he's not that big. He's not as big as the monsters in those movies, but he's bigger than human. So there's that. Um, and the film just kind of unfolds from there. He's got a mother and a father, which are Gillian Jacobs and John Gallagher Jr. And he's not liked at school. He's bullied by the kid from 8 Bit Christmas. um, and and his posse, I guess. He has two other. It's mainly the one kid. I don't know, Brady or something like that. That bullies him, and there's a story that they used to be friends, and they just keep calling his autistic stuff weird. Some of the dialogue didn't work for me because once they established that these kids have history and that their friends are their moms are friends, some of the questions that he asks are just they're there for the audience. You know, they're there to just, I don't know, make him a dick or something. There's a scene where he's where the main kid is using his phone in class to speak, and then Brady or whatever his name was is like, what does he get to use his phone? Why can't I use my phone in class? And then some other kid has to like remind him that that kid is autistic. He's like, shut up, man, he's autistic. It's like, thanks. In case the audience didn't figure it out, I'm glad we brought that up in this scene. And then we find out later that this kid has known the other kid, has known the autistic kid for a long time and knows he's autistic. He's fully aware. He just asked the question just either to be a dick or because the movie needed him to ask the question so that it could be said aloud. You know, like we couldn't pick up on it. You know what I'm saying? Like we couldn't pick up on the fact that this kid was nonverbal. It's pretty easy to pick up on it that this kid, because he doesn't communicate. So every time he's scared, I mean, he'll scream, but he doesn't really have words. So, very uncomfortable, all the time, and I picked up on what this kid was putting down. You know, I got it. I did not need it to be said aloud to me in awkward classrooms. The film just kind of plays out from there. There's talk about, you know, trying to develop his speech. He has an assistant that's with him when he's in school. He has somebody that's working with him on trying to get him to speak and make sentences and make words. And I thought the film did a pretty good job of handling this kid's autism without making him sort of, I don't know, a spectacle. It just sort of feels like a realistic representation of autism. And the fact that this monster has attached himself to a lonely kid that's nonverbal autistic, feels like that tracks. I mean, this kid has a lot of tics, and he's young, and he's at the age where little kids are not going to be bothered with that because they're all about seeming cool and hanging out in cliques, and the empathy does not exist at this age. So, kind of feels like he probably wouldn't have many friends, if any at all. So I bought that. I don't know what's going on with the parents at the top. They don't really ever, it's funny the things that they feel like spelling out to you, and the other things they just kind of figure out they'll say in like covert ways. It seems like dad's moving out and into his own place. But there doesn't really seem to be a whole lot of tension between the parents. There's like suggested tension, like the kid is listening to them argue downstairs, but they're not really arguing. I mean, if that's arguing, that's mild. I mean, you guys, if that's their version of arguing, they definitely needed to work through their shit because people have argued far heavier and far more pervasively and consistently than that, and are still together. So they have like a light argument sometimes, which is just sort of like, did you put the dish in the sink? I told you not to put the dish in the sink. God, you're gonna have to move out now. You know, it felt like it was over such small things. And then this monster is summoned. And there's a sleepover where the mom tries to get the kids to socialize, but of course she socializes with 3 bullies who we saw in a previous scene kind of beat up the autistic kid and get rid of his phone so he can communicate to anybody. But luckily this Larry doesn't need to be on one specific phone. He just travels through electricity. If anything has electricity, he can move into it. So, and he can communicate through electricity. So these kids are at the sleepover, and they kind of piss Larry off a little bit more. Some terrifying shit happens, and the movie just kind of keeps going, and Larry just keeps kind of coming more and more into the real world the more they read his story. I don't know why people keep reading the story in the movie, but horror movies don't. Horror movies have to have at least one element, I think, that doesn't make sense. Something that where you go as a person where you're like, I wouldn't do that. You know? The other day I was sitting there with some friends and I was like, I'm the guy that survives the horror movies because I don't run upstairs. you know? Um, and it's true. There are certain times where you're just like, this feels like a bad idea. It's at bare minimum unnecessary. Like I'm trying to do this to prove some sort of weird point about how brave I am, but to who? Like who am I proving this to? So, it's just a very weird film. It's effective though. I will say that the mood that's created here, I was genuinely creeped out in certain scenes. The film has a balance of cheap jump scares and earned jump scares. Balance. And what I mean by that are cheap jump scares are things that are not scary, but they cut to something that's just like a loud noise. And it's not at all relevant, and it's bullshit. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're in a scene and then they just do a fast cut. There was something where they were like at the house and then they cut to school and like it's like a whacking against a chalkboard or something like that. Like somebody takes a ruler and just smacks a chalkboard. And so it makes that loud like thwap sound, all of a sudden you're just like, oh, I'm awake. But I'm not scared. There was nothing scary about it. There was no tension. It was just like, yeah, you could do that. You could just have random cuts into things that are not scary. You could probably make an entire movie out of shit like that and never have any kind of monster or villain or anything. Just keep cutting to loud sounds and just keep waking your audience up every 5 to 10 minutes. It has those, and I hate those. They're so cheap. If you're a good filmmaker, you should be able to get your audience without those. You get maybe like one. There's like one effective jump scare maybe where we can like laugh and listen to it. We're like, ah, that was good, funny. Get Out uses one. There's the deer scene, right? That's it. That's all we really get. Everything else is sort of entrenched into the movie. There's not like constantly just like random things happening that have no relevance whatsoever. Shyamalan used one in Signs where there was a dog that barked just out of nowhere, just for no reason. It wasn't really scary. It was just like the dog just suddenly just jumps up at the camera and barks. So yeah, it has, but it overuses them. It has too many of them. Too many non-scares, but it also has the other ones where it builds the moment. The kids are using the technology they have because they can only see Larry through the electronic devices cameras, like either whether they're holding a tablet or a phone, they're using the rear camera and holding it up so they can see the screen, and that's how they can see Larry. So that's effective. There's a pretty effective scene where the main kid is trying to take a photo of himself, and even though we can't see it, there just keeps materializing. It's like, he's using filters, and so the filters keep finding like another face behind him. I thought that was pretty effective. That's a good scene. And they're just the rules, like trying to follow the rules of electricity and how that works out. Because this guy uses electricity to move around. There's a scene where they're in a field and like the lights in skyscrapers that are like far away are flickering. And I did question that a little bit. I was like, how far does he pull energy from? I was like, those things are described as being in the distance. They went out into a field because they thought, hey, let's go where there isn't electricity. And he's pulling from skyscrapers? All right. That doesn't make any sense, but cool. Like, I feel like he should have like a range that makes sense. Not like, hey, that's 20 miles away, but I'm going to pull pull the electricity. Like, the entire city is basically experiencing this, but only like a couple people are. And they're like, what the is up with my electricity in this house? Oh, sorry, Larry's out, you know? Um, I thought the acting performances from the kids were good. Gillian Jacobs as the mother, I did not think that was a Gillian Jacobs. I didn't look up the cast ahead of time, and then afterwards they were like Gillian Jacobs, and I was like, wow, would not have guessed that. So I'm gonna give her props for that. It didn't feel like it was her at all. Uh, and I have seen some of her more dramatic work, and I still didn't feel like this was her at all. John Gallagher Jr. as the dad, didn't feel like that was going to be him, so I was surprised that was him too. So kudos to both of those actors for surprising me with their performances. And kudos to the director for at least being able to create a mood and a theme and hold your attention in the moments where he needs to be effective with his scares. So it's pretty good. It's not a bad film. It has like a 5 point something because horror fans are really, they're tough to really please. I think this one kind of has like a little bit of a new twist. I know we don't like these monsters that don't really exist and they're like in the tech world. Those films seem to keep getting like lampooned by audiences and critics. They're like, oh, this isn't some, we like our monsters to have come from ancient books where somebody reads the wrong passage and summons them. They can't come from technology anymore. So anyway, Come Play is effective. It's not particularly gory, although the monster's description is pretty solid. The audio description on this is atrocious. I'm sorry if you're a human being and you worked on this audio description. I don't know what happened to it. It sounds awful. Like the actual quality of the audio description is not good. On top of the fact that there were clearly mistakes that were being made in the audio description, which means if you're the human narrator, I kind of like, do you read the script that you're reading before you read it? Because there are certain things where I would have read that and been like, okay, well, that's obviously not what, this was obviously written wrong. There's a scene where the main kid is said to be lifting a table. He's not lifting a table, he's lifting a tablet. There should have been a T at the end of that. He is lifting the tablet, not the table. He's 7. Ridiculous. Anyway, there was a chase sequence where there was no dialogue happening, and they let it go for like 10 seconds before I was like, what is going on? It was just music. It was just like the music got louder, basically, and it was like intense because they're like running from something. They're running, well, from Larry. I mean, I might as well already say what they're running from. And there's nothing else in this film to run. It's always Larry that they're running from. So they're running from Larry, and the music's intense, but there's no dialogue. And it's like, this could be getting described. And then later on, like, it catches up, and it's like, oh, they run through the street and into a field. I'm just like, thanks. While it was happening, the score is here, but there's nothing really particularly amazing about this score. It's just a traditional horror movie score that gets loud when it needs to be intense and then drops out when it's about to jump scare you. So it's pretty typical horror movie stuff. um, yeah, it's just I was so unimpressed with the audio description, with the quality, with the fact that nobody proofread the script, with the fact that it sounds like there are weird cuts too, and they're really abrupt. Like somebody chopped something out and then like suddenly we're back in. It's not really smoothly edited. It's just kind of clunkily thrown together. Um, my favorite part was, and this is just because of Freevee, because it was on Freevee, which is a ad supported. There's no way to not you can't get rid of the ads. So, Freevee set up a commercial break, literally in the middle of a jump scare. So, like the first part of the jump scare was happening, it had just happened, and then we cut to commercial, and then so it was almost like you got jump scared twice, because you got the beginning of the and then you're like in like I watched like two commercials, and then I was like, I don't know, when's the commercial break gonna end, and then as soon as it ended, we were back in like that like loud noise scream moment, and it was just like the commercial ended and you're like, and I'm like, oh my god. uh, it split up the same jump scare into two jump scares. Unintentionally effective. So, I think this is better than a lot of people did. I think it has good acting. Um, Maybe it's a little silly. I don't know. But I don't think. I mean, it does its own thing. I don't feel like you know, it didn't copy something. So there's something to be said for that. And I thought it legitimately earned a lot of its scares. It actually found a creative way to tell a story. So, and while the main kid is autistic, I feel like this could have happened to anybody who's not autistic. This could have just happened to a bullied kid who wasn't autistic and just sat at home all the time. Was being made fun of, and then he pulled up his screen. He would just be better at communicating to his parents what was happening. So, the communication barrier is really what helps, and the fact that he feels alienated a lot of times just kind of adds on. But they probably could have pulled off a film with, I don't know, a kid that's being made fun of for his weight. Anyway, that's it. So, I'm going to give Come Play a B minus. I would give it higher, but it has cheap jump scares. And more than one. You get one. It has more than one where the scare has absolutely nothing to do with anything relevant at all, and it's just stupid. So, but mostly well. So if you're looking for something a little bit different that you probably haven't seen yet this Halloween, check out Come Play. Anyway, thanks for watching. Please click that subscribe button, because I'm hungry and I haven't eaten in days, and I need subscribers. I need subscribers to eat food. And I have a website, MacTheMovieGuy.com. You can go to the audio description project, adp.acb.org, where you can see what has audio description and where you can watch it. You can go to the adna.org, that's the adna.org. It'll let you know who's narrating your favorite films and television series. And you can follow me on Instagram and Threads at Mac the Movie Guy. And as long as Twitter remains free, on Twitter. But I'm not going to pay for Twitter. So if Elon pulls that trigger, yeah. Anyway, I will review something else and see you guys on the other side.